In previous videos, I've already spoken about a model that ties together pro-weight and anti-weight approaches in a single model with no contradictions. I'm going to try and really nail down that concept as precisely as possible. Although going beyond that, I'm going to take the examples where this is most essential and where the standard models arguably break down the most. So we'll be looking at quiet playing, very fast playing, and also fast and quiet playing particularly. Now, maybe everyone's going to hate me for this because I'm going to argue against aspects of both the pro and anti-weight methods. But I'd rather look at it as a positive thing. What I'm trying to do is take the really important parts and tie them together with no contradictions whatsoever. Anyway, so the thing I want to get beyond is the idea that weight is just like a dial. We turn it up or we turn it down. Obviously, it works to a large degree. So if I take an example from a Chopin nocturne, firstly, I'll play it quite strongly, using the weight to help increase the level of sound. Then I'll take the weight away, and I'll play it more lightly. It's very obvious. You can play louder if you feel weight in the keys, no doubt about it. Now I'll take the weight away. But what I'll show you now is I'm going to just take one technique this time, and I'll do both of those examples with very little difference whatsoever. So the stronger one. And then the lighter one. I'm sure you can see they look much more similar. So let's break down how this works and how, if we approach technique in a certain way, it becomes much less complicated. It doesn't matter so much whether we're loud, quiet, fast or slow. There's a style of technique which is incredibly versatile. Of course we can play around, we can experiment, but if we have that baseline level that does many different things, it can be so much easier. Anyway, so the concept I want to show you is like a weighing of scales, essentially. If you imagine the one with a pivot in the middle, you put a weight, you've got the kind of hanging baskets, put a weight on each side. So I'll show you, so if this end of the scales is supposed to become heavy, and that's how weight technique works, it doesn't really work by releasing weight particularly, because this end is not automatically heavy. You have to kind of push it forwards basically and lever like this to get a sense of pressure at that end. If I put weight at this end, it's not really doing anything. So think about it this way: if it becomes heavy at this end, it's actually a sign not that we've let go of the weight in a passive fashion. It's a sign we've driven the mass and we've pushed it into that end. Now imagine there was a little person trapped under there. Imagine there's a weight on top of him and he's shouting, no, help, I'm getting crushed. Imagine I then say, don't worry, I'm going to save you. I've got a weight. I'm going to put a weight on this end. I'm going to save you. And he shouts at me, no, it's already too heavy. Take the weight off. So I go like this. I proceed to completely crush him and kill him. So you've got to think about it. It's not just more or less. It doesn't work that way. The way to understand weight is that we have two opposite functions. If I call it weight at the moment on the fingers, it's not strictly weight, to be honest. It's aimed mass. It requires a bit of a push to get it to bear on the finger. That's what I was doing in the nocturne at first. I was basically pushing it a bit forwards. It feels like weight, sure. But the truth is not strictly so simple. It's really driven mass, and see, when I do that, this end goes up. This end is arguably becoming lighter to make this end heavier, and that's the standard move. So, to counter that, what we really need to do is counterweight. So I'll call it weight on the fingers, or weight here, I'm going to refer to as counterweight to make the clear distinction. So in our model of the scales, if I have my finger in the middle, the issue is, are we making it heavier on this side? That's going to make the other side lighter. Basic seesaw effect. Or alternatively, if we feel the weight on this end, we're going to take the pressure off the other side. And that's the thing that's been missed, I believe. I've never seen this really touched on in any model of piano technique I've come across. I've had to figure this out myself. And the reason it was so essential for me, I made the mistake of trying to lighten while playing fast and light, and the results were absolutely disastrous. So I'll show you the examples where this really stood out to me. I've been playing a song, a Chopin Liszt song, My Joys, we have many of these little cadenzas where you have to play incredibly quietly. So I'll show you the kind of mistake I was making first. I thought this has to be very light. So I would tend to do that thing like I showed before in the nocturne. I could get away with that in the melody, that was no problem. But here, if this end is going up, now the thing is, yeah, even if I make sure, I'm not pushing forwards at the moment, so I'm not going up in the sense of delivering more force into the hand. That's not happening. But still, because I'm going out of the keys, my fingers are losing their access. I'm really skittering around. Now, if I think, yeah, way down on the keys, that's certainly not going to solve anything. That would actually increase the same problem. It might sound like the opposite, but it's not. Because if I try to weigh into the keys, I can't play quietly. And by trying to do so, again, that's actually going up. So we've got to get away from the simplicity. Just turn the dial up or down. No. Send the weight to a different place. Counterweight. Now if this stays down, my wrist stays down, here I'd feel the weight. That's not weighing onto the hand. That's taking the pressure off it more than anything. Just coming back to this. Remember, that goes down. That does not deliver more pressure. You could strap a kilogram onto, sorry, you could strap a ton onto this. All it's going to do is come down faster. It's not sending weight to the key end. It's just going to create a stabilisation. So now, when I actually play it properly, the way I want to play it, get nice and low. Sorry, not really warmed up at the moment, so not great still, but getting a little bit better. But yes, so it's really important to understand this when we play softly and fast. By the way, this piano is incredibly heavy. I've got to stress, possibly the reason I had to discover this, because this piano is so heavy. If I have even a hint of this on this piano, because the reactions are very strong, they yank me more and more forwards. It goes past the point of no return. We can look at it as like an upward spiral, basically. The phrase normally downward spiral. But in this case, if I go too far, the more my fingers pull, the more they yank me even more forward, the more the problem increases. So it's so vital when I get low, the action of the fingers doesn't pull me forward so much. And the responses to it are more direct. They come back at the arm. They're not yanking me forwards. So, yeah, basically, it's keeping us in a certain range. The counterweight stops us going past the point of no return. It keeps the angular finger action simple. And it does not weigh on the fingers. Again, this is the distinction. Weight here is taking pressure off the fingers. And that doesn't mean the arm is disconnected. It's very nicely connected indeed. The fingers still have the chance to stand up by doing their movements, which cannot jam. The counterweight stops the jam. Weight on the hand jams. Weight off and around the fingers does not jam. It cannot jam. All it can do is settle into a nice neutral. So this kind of stuff, if you want to play lightly, it's keeping the weight in the right place, which is the answer to that. Now let's talk about playing quietly, not so much at speed now. If I show you a little bit of Clair de Lune by Debussy. Now it can be tempting to do this kind of thing to free yourself. You don't want to feel, again, if I just weigh straight on my fingers, obviously there's a natural pressure, but really deep down, again, it actually means this. It's a small scale version, but to get the pressure into the fingers, to really aim it deep into the keys, it's really a small version of that. So it's not about up versus down. It's not simplistically about heavy versus light. Send the weight to the right place. See, my hands will expand. So I'm not resisting that. There's no heaviness here. That's free to stand up nicely. What the weight of my arm is doing is not creating the sound. It's just moderating any response. It's stopping me doing all this kind of stuff. Now, of course, I should add, if I want to do that occasionally, I don't want to say that's always wrong. Let's not go too far with this. But if this was our only move, yes, it's nice and light, but my fingers are struggling to get into the keys here. It's a bit too light, if anything. And then because they're so indirect, at some point, I may come crashing back down all the harder. If I just stay down more in the first place, make room for the hand to expand while that's going on, never need to go away from the simple neutral. Now I may say if I get to the end of a phrase, maybe sometimes if I was phrasing off, it's very nice to become incredibly indirect, and then when the finger strikes the key, that helps us be super light for phrasing off. So I'm not saying never lift the wrist, but generally be careful not to do it too early. Save it for the right place. Just as you're coming out of there, don't start doing this mid-phrase and get stuck up here. It just makes it very difficult. So same for chords as well, even for this kind of thing. I always used to do more of this kind of thing, push through. Now it stops the jamming into the bottom of the key if I go like that, and I can get stuck. That's not very pleasant at all. So what this does, it gives us somewhere else to go. The problem is, again, it runs out. Do we really want to get up here and then have to quickly reset to get up here every time? It's not very sustainable, even for this, which is not too fast. So probably, so yeah, let's not crash into the keys. And you may not even see that my wrist comes down a fraction. But if I always go that way, it just really causes endless problems. I've got to learn to go this way and get down around it. Now when I play it, look at the simplicity now. See, I'm not actually moving down really, but by feeling the counterweight, I'm stopping this stuff happening. So that's where all the simplicity comes from, not from using weight to move the key, using the weight to stabilise and create a very simple suspension, while the fingers are responsible for moving the keys. It's not what they call finger isolation. It's true that if I didn't move my arm at all, my arm is rigid. Let's say if I do a bit of that, try and move nothing but the fingers while the arm's stuck. There's not even a response there. That's bad. But we gotta, again, we can't oversimplify. If we say either that we're doing this finger isolation and the arm is wholly disconnected, or we're using weight on the hand to move the key, we've completely missed the reality of the best option. There's freedom in the arm, it's not rigid. Can you see that little bit of response there? At the moment I am coming up, that's the natural response. Feel how to respond instead of just do that and get stuck. Once you've felt how to respond, just feel a tiny bit more weight. And it's not resisting, it's absorbing is the key difference. Resisting, it just looks dead. Everything is stuck, everything is tight. Absorbing is a very different matter. You can see my arm is indeed responding there, it's just not responding in this exaggerated fashion. I particularly don't want to thrust, I just want to be free enough that it responds. And as long as I don't thrust, the response can never go past neutral. Because at that point you have to actually start pushing over to go any further. So by starting lower, even if I do go up a little bit, it just ends in neutral. Generally starting lower is a very good move. From lower to neutral, that's fine, but equally, from slightly above and then towards neutral, that's perfectly fine too. So it's not really about up or down actually, is one way to look at it. Really it's about being very close to equilibrium. Equilibrium is the balance state, where we don't move either way. If we just thrust massively forwards, that's terrible. If we come crashing down, obviously that is going to sound very heavy and it's going to be incredibly imprecise. So anything that just slightly drifts up is fine, as long as it doesn't go past the neutral unnecessarily. Anything that slightly drifts down is fine, as long as you're not blocking and getting stuck. There is still room to carry on actually coming down. It's the ones where we have nowhere to go, whether that would have been upwards or downwards. If you're not doing it, it doesn't make any difference either way. The ones that get stuck are the really bad ones. But really, increasingly, I find the most versatile ones, the ones I've missed the most, are the down ones. As I say, up can be okay, but you've got to be so careful not to overdo your ups. Whereas the down, it's self-limiting basically. As you go around like this, I'm not instantly jamming in, but I'm gradually converging on the balance state, where I'd have to really work to go any further down. The hand is learning to adapt all the time. Subtle changes. This is real balance. If you imagine like Tai Chi, someone standing in the park, doing these sort of slow movements, feeling their way around. This is real balance when it changes gradually. The sudden thrust gets stuck, or the sudden relaxation. Nothing to do with balance. We're not learning to interact with the keyboard properly. If you can come down gradually, those constant adaptations in the fingers are where we really learn something about balance. Okay, so in summary, remember there's two ends of the scale to consider. For me, I'm convinced the reason there's so much warfare between pro-weight and anti-weight methods is they're both making the same mistake as each other. They're not defining two different ends of the scale. So they're treating it like there's the single dial. The pro-weight guys want to turn that dial way up. The anti-weight guys want to turn it all the way down. It doesn't actually mean anything either way round, unless we're clear. We have two ends. Which end are we putting the weight on? Where is it going? So remember, up, it can mean lightening. if this end of the arm goes up and everything is lightened, as I said, we have these problems if we're in the middle of a phrase, big problems, even if we are lightening this end. And remember, it can also mean we're thrusting, we're pushing. Actually, another little cadenza of the shape out. This one, I had real problems in this one, so I was always pushing. I could barely access the key with my fifth finger. What I had to do was come down, and that actually made it lighter, not heavier. So remember, yeah, up here can actually mean more downforce on this end of the scale. And to summarise the downs now as well, down at this end takes pressure off that, and very often the pro-weight people will portray it. We need to put the weight on the fingers. I'm convinced the reality is the opposite. For so much of what is successful in practice is when they say feel the weight, what they're actually saying is feel the weight here, and that serves to lighten the hand. If we don't understand that, and we think they're telling us to get the weight onto the hand, we're likely to do more of that thrusting and increase the problems. So remember, down here is generally to lighten this end. Of course, you could stiffen everything, and then down means down everywhere. But this is the really important one we have to understand. We don't want to associate this to heaviness, because it simply doesn't cause heaviness when we understand it properly. With a free wrist, not locking everything to shove everything down, as if it's one rigid entity. Anyway, so have a think about that. Anytime you're thinking about weight, always ask yourself, is it here? Is it here? And that's how we'll really start to make sense of things and take away all this needless confusion as to what weight is telling us to really do.